Harper Paperbacks and HarperAudio present The Good Samaritan, a novel, by Toni Halleen, performed by Adam Verner, Tara Sands, Carolyn, Jania, and Giordan Diaz. For Mom and Dad, with gratitude and awe, with love always. Tenure. 1. A guarantee. 2. To be made permanent. From the Old French, to hold. 1. Matthew. Sunday, September 27th, 1992. First of all, I didn't know there was a body on the porch. I barely knew what a feed store was, and it didn't matter because this was Sunday night and everything was closed. Anyway, I wasn't looking for fertilizer when I stopped at the quaint little hardware store for farmers. I was desperate for shelter. For the past half hour on I-35 South, I'd been white-knuckling it through heavy rain and low visibility, while other cars had clustered under bridges. But when the hail started, pummeling my Subaru with ice pellets, my need for protection was urgent. Fortunately, I had reached my exit, the one I took on my weekly commute to campus. As I veered off the highway, Halfmeyer's Feed and Seed was the first place I saw with an overhang. The moment I pulled under the carport, the racket stopped. Relief. I switched off the wipers and caught my breath. Then, in the glare of my headlights, I saw it. A lump on the porch. It was covered with a tarp, and it could have been anything. A bag of seed, a coil of rope, a mound of dirt. But as I stared at the shape, I understood it was a body. Humans recognize other humans, a simple truth I explained to my first years every fall in Sociology 101. I didn't know whether this tarp-covered human was dead or alive, and frankly, which would be worse. All I knew was I couldn't take my eyes off that lump. Perhaps it was my training as a sociologist to be curious. Perhaps it was my instinct as a dad to be filled with dread. But I should have listened to Claire. I should have stayed in Minneapolis. My daughter had tried to warn me. She was only 16, but she fancied herself an amateur meteorologist, which only meant she watched the Weather Channel. Claire said they were forecasting rain with possible hail. She said I'd be driving directly into the storm, but I was sure I'd outrun it. She'd accused me of minimizing her concerns, not taking her seriously. I assumed she was just being clingy. Lately, she'd been having trouble going back to her mother's after our weekends. Still, Sunday was my travel day, and Claire should have understood by now that I needed time to prepare for my Monday morning lecture. For a person like me, an assistant professor on the verge of promotion, every decision felt loaded, like there was a right and a wrong. I had to be careful. I was finally about to get tenure, and I wasn't going to let anything screw that up. Not this time. I'd failed at my previous appointment, somewhat of a misunderstanding, over an omitted authorship credit. It was complicated, but the fiasco had cast a mark against me. But now I had a second bite at the apple, albeit in my 40s, and I knew this was my last chance. Tenure, the coveted goal of every serious academic, whether they admitted it or not, meant a promotion, a title, and a raise. These were obvious advantages, but for me, the most valuable part of tenure would be the guaranteed employment. I could not be fired. I could serve out my days without worry. I'd be protected. I would belong. I'd be home. But tonight, I was staring at a tarp-covered, body-shaped lump in the middle of Minnesota farm country, wondering what to do. What would the college expect me to do in this situation? What would a tenured professor do? My behavior, as a reflection of my judgment, was always subject to scrutiny. This was hard for non-academic people, like my daughter and ex-wife, to understand.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?